Hi, I'm Romain, and I'll be making Tartin. It's a French dish, kind of like an apple pie. It is a tart because it's the apples being used are caramelized. Caramelized means that it's a combination between sugar and butter on a stove, and then after it's caramelized on top of the stove, you put a puff pastry topping on it. You then put that dish into the oven, and at the end you flip it. The puff pastry will be the crust to it. This is a 2-day process because you want to let the apples dry out so the dish isn't too liquidy. So the first day, what I'm going to be doing is just skinning the apples and chopping them up so I can let them dry out a little bit and then make the rest of the dish tomorrow. So the two apples that you want to use in this particular dish are Braeburn apples, which are these red ones, and Granny Smith, which are, of course, the green ones. So the first step in this process is skinning the apple. You don't want to wash the apples before because that will just add to the liquid. So to skin the apple, you do a layer around the top, like so. This gives you a basis to start down with. So now that I've peeled the apple, I'm going to chop it up. Once I chop it up, I'm going to put it in a bowl and refrigerate it for 1 to 3 days. You don't want it to be too liquidy because obviously it'll add to the liquid and that'll take away the caramelization. So first you want to cut it straight down the middle. Once it's cut, you lay the two sides flat and cut down the middle again. And now that those are done, you can take the core out of the apple with a small knife, and you are done for the first day of chopping once you've done that with all your apples. Alright, so the apples have dried out for just over 24 hours now, and the first thing that you want to do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And then you want to put spread 6 tablespoons of butter into a skillet or a pan, as I've done so already. And the first thing that you want to do with that is then sprinkle 2/3 of a cup of light brown sugar on top of the butter. So that's what I'll do here. This will form your caramelization. The brown sugar creates that color that caramel is famous for. For the next step, I've already cut the bottoms of the apples so that they can stand up, as you'll be able to see in a moment. This dish is going to be a great dish for in the fall when the apples are in their prime season. It's a great dessert dish, and it can also be eaten for breakfast. So now I've sprinkled all the brown sugar into my skillet. And the next thing I'm going to do is lay my apples out in a almost like flower-like petal type thing. The very middle, I'll put 4 apples together, or of what I have of the apples, and that's known as the button of the apple. So I've already pre-cut my apples so that they can stand up on their own. And you'll see here, you want to really squeeze them together as much as possible. And that right there will be the button. And then I will then coat, or surround rather, the rest of the apples, or rest of the button with apples as well. So now I'm just going to keep adding layers until the entire pan is really filled with apples. So as you can see here, you just want to really pack them in as tight as possible. They stick pretty well to the brown sugar butter mix, and you want to fill the pan with as many apples as possible, which might mean I have some leftovers. So here is the finished product when I've moved all of the apples into the skillet. So my next step in this process will be rolling out the puff pastry, which will become the crust eventually of the tart. Puff pastries are often used as crusts on pies and things like that, and also used often in crusts and appetizers. So as you can see, there are multiple brands for puff pastries. For this one, I'm going to be using Pepperidge Farm. So the first thing that I want to do before I start rolling it out is I want to put flour on both the board and onto my my rolling pin. Just make sure that the puff pastry will not stick to the board when you're trying to pick it up. So you want to do this to make sure that it does not stick to the board. So I'm going to be using 1 sheet of the puff pastry. This particular brand comes rolled out into 3, and you want to make sure that you just throw away the pieces of paper inside and on the outside. And now you want to start rolling it out. Eventually this will be formed into this to be able to put over, which is the top to the skillet with the apples inside of it, and that will make sure that the puff pastry is able to fit perfectly over the apples before they're put into the oven. So you want to roll from the inside out when using puff pastry or any type of dough, really. And you want to try to make it evenly thin throughout it. So now that the puff pastry dough is rolled out, I'm going to use the top of the skillet, as I said before, to almost use it like a cookie cutter. So you just want to push down and kind of rotate it. And as you see, it didn't work. So I've used this to cut a circle, and if it was a little tough, you just use a knife to cut around it, and then you're going to lift the rest of the dough. You're going to discard this. I'll just put it to the side, so if I need to use it later on or at any other point, I'll be able to. So now I'll put this over my skillet or over the apples, and you want to just lightly tuck it in around the edges. Like so. And now you are done with that step. So now that I've put the dough on top of the apples in the skillet, I'm going to put it on the stove to heat it on a medium heat for about 10 to 13 minutes. This will get the brown sugar and the butter to mix and create that caramel. So, in the meantime, while the tart is on the stove, I'll make some whipped cream. Similar to apple pies, it's best served warm with ice cream or whipped cream or something along those lines. So you start off by pouring them in about half the carton of cream. That's good. To make the whipped cream, you want to start off with by putting the electric beater on a lower setting so that it doesn't splash, and as you go on, you will gradually move the how quick it's going further and further up. So now that the whipped cream is being beat on full speed, you want to put in about a tablespoon of powdered sugar. To let it mix in with, and not too long it'll be ready to go. So now that this is about done on the stovetop, the first thing you want to do is, well, if there's any liquid that begins to bubble, you want to just grab a spoon and take it out. This one does not have any liquid though, so the first thing you would want to do is wrap your handle in Reynolds wrap, or in tinfoil rather. Just to preserve the handle, make sure that it doesn't melt or anything like that. You just want to wrap it around like so, and you want to an oven mitt and just toss this into the oven. It cooks for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then it'll be just about done. So this is the final product. I now have to take it and flip it, which is probably the toughest part of the entire baking process. A quick story about the Tarte Tartin. It's that it was created in France at the Hotel Tartin, which is obviously how it got its name. Supposedly one of the cookers was overworked and tired, and when the customers at the hotel restaurant asked for a apple pie, she was too tired and left it in the sugar and butter for too long, which ended up kind of creating the caramelization. And when she put it into the oven, she put it on the stove, put it into the oven, and when she took it out, she was surprised to find how many people really enjoyed her dish. So that explains why it's still around today and why it's still a very popular dish. So for this final part, you put the this right here. It's out of the stove pretty recently, or out of the oven rather, pretty recently. So you want to lean it up and very quickly just go, and you remove the pan, and that's the finished product.